Last week, the Chiefs training staff was accused of being unprofessional toward a Ravens player during the game. And unfortunately, this isn't the first time their medical team has faced criticism. In today's video, I'll break down what happened, give you an update on Hollywood Brown's chances of playing in Week 2, which aren't looking good, share Mahomes' thoughts on political endorsements, and more. First up, a Baltimore Ravens player claims that the Chiefs' medical staff really let him down after he was injured in Thursday's game. I'll dive into that in a moment, but I also want to touch on some interesting things I noticed about the Chiefs' snap counts from Week 1. One thing I was curious about was how the wide receivers were being used, especially with Hollywood Brown out and Juju Smith-Schuster just joining the team. Here's how the snap counts played out. Rashee Rice led with 38 snaps, followed by Xavier Worthy with 31, and Justin Watson with 26. Juju had 11 snaps, Sky Moore had 9, and Mecole Hardman didn't get any. It's clear the top 3 receivers right now are Rice, Worthy, and Watson. Once Hollywood Brown returns, I expect Watson to slide into the 4th spot until Juju gets fully up to speed. Even when Juju is up to full speed, Watson might still see more playing time. By the way, congrats to Juju Smith-Schuster on his engagement over the weekend. Before moving on, I was surprised that Mecole Hardman got 0 offensive snaps. I didn't expect him to be heavily used, but I thought he'd at least play some gadget roles, especially with Hollywood Brown out. For now, it looks like Mecole is sticking to special teams, handling both punt and kickoff returns. On the defensive side, the battle for cornerback 2 seems to be over, at least for now, with Jaylen Watson leading the way. He played 71 snaps, just 3 fewer than Trent McDuffie, who had 74. Joshua Williams followed with 31 snaps. So for now, it looks like Watson has secured the CB2 role, judging by snap counts. Now, about the unprofessional accusation against the Chiefs' medical staff, this comes from pass rusher Kyle Van Noy, who felt let down by the team's medical team after he suffered a fracture around his eye during the game. Van Noy said it wasn't a serious injury, but it also wasn't minor. It was moderate, in his words. What upset him was the fact that he had to wait almost an entire quarter before being seen by a doctor. He mentioned that when you're hurt, especially with something like an eye injury, you expect quick attention. Van Noy was supposed to see an eye specialist, but it took far too long for one to come and examine him in the locker room, which he called super unprofessional. Interestingly, the Chiefs training staff received an F grade in the NFLPA's 2024 player survey and a D+ in 2023, so even their own players seem to have issues with them. One of the complaints was that the staff is often understaffed, making it hard for players to get the attention they need. I don't think this was done on purpose to keep Van Noy out of the game, but in the future, I hope players can get checked out much faster. I'm not sure how long it typically takes for a doctor to respond, but according to Van Noy, the wait time was too long. Up next, I'll talk about the Bengals and the uncertainty surrounding Joe Burrow's wrist surgery from the offseason. I'll also update you on Hollywood Brown's injury and Mahomes' thoughts on politics. Kind of. As for Hollywood Brown, Andy Reid shared today that he's the only player on the team dealing with an injury right now. Brown is still rehabbing his sternoclavicular dislocation and didn't practice today. Stay tuned for more updates on that, as well as the injury report at the end of the video. Andy Reid hasn't ruled out the possibility of Hollywood Brown playing this Sunday, despite him missing practice today. When asked about Brown's chances, Reid said, "Not necessarily, so we'll need to keep an eye on the injury report as the week goes on. If Brown remains listed as did not participate all week, he probably won't play. However, if he's listed as a limited participant, there's still a chance he could make it for Sunday. For now, it's too early to tell, but his lack of practice today suggests he might not be trending towards playing." Reid also mentioned that recovery from this kind of sternoclavicular dislocation varies from person to person. Since this injury is quite rare, there's not a lot of case study on how football players recover from it. While most players typically take about a month to heal, Reid noted that Hollywood is working hard and feels good about his progress. If it were up to Brown, he'd be out there already, but it's up to the doctors to make the final call. They might be the reason Brown doesn't play this Sunday. Switching gears to the Bengals, Reid was asked why these matchups always seem so intense. He compared the tempo of these games to playoff-level intensity and admitted he wasn't sure why they play out this way. But let's be honest, these two teams don't exactly get along. The Bengals often feel like the Chiefs' little brother, always in the shadow of Kansas City's postseason success. Despite Cincinnati winning 3 out of 4 games against KC with Joe Burrow as the starter, Bengals fans really savor those regular season victories. Even though they're one in the playoffs, they're still proud of their Super Bowl appearance. This game means a lot to both teams, and even though it might not be a true rivalry yet, it definitely feels like one. Mahomes pointed out that playoff contenders generally bring a heightened intensity because these games can impact playoff seeding. Speaking of Mahomes, he talked about a few players from last week's game, starting with Noah Gray, who recently signed a 3-year extension. Mahomes praised Gray for being a smart, versatile player who excels at catching, blocking, and filling in for Travis Kelce. Andy Reid echoed Mahomes' sentiments, noting that Gray is a valuable offensive player, a solid special teamer, and can step in as a backup to Kelce when needed. It's clear that Gray is well loved by his coaches and teammates. Next up is Rashee Rice, who had an impressive game against the Ravens, surpassing 100 receiving yards for the 4th time in his career. Reid said Rice is much more comfortable this year compared to last and is developing his skills well. Mahomes added that Rice is now more versatile and can play roles he wasn't ready for last season. With other offensive weapons around him, Rice is getting more opportunities to shine, and Xavier Worthy's presence is also helping him get open. Worthy himself shared that he spends a lot of time studying opposing defenses, which he believes contributes to his on-field success. His ability to stretch the field helps create opportunities for players like Rice and Travis Kelce. Last week, Rice made the most of these opportunities, and I'm sure the Bengals will be paying close attention to both Rice and Worthy in their upcoming matchup. Before diving deeper into the Bengals and Joe Burrow's wrist, I wanted to touch on a recent topic involving Patrick Mahomes. He was asked several political questions today, which is something I usually steer clear of on this channel. However, with everything going on, it's worth mentioning. A few weeks ago, Brittany Mahomes liked a post about Donald Trump on Instagram, leading some to believe she supports him for the upcoming election. In response, Trump made a comment about Brittany, calling her a big fan of his. With such high-profile figures in the news, it was inevitable that Mahomes would be asked about it. Mahomes handled the questions with his usual professionalism. He made it clear that he doesn't want to use his platform to endorse any particular candidate. Instead, he prefers to focus on encouraging people to register to vote, study the candidates, and make informed decisions based on their own convictions. Mahomes emphasized that his main goal is to be the best person he can be for his family and community. He values how people treat each other over their political views and believes in respecting everyone's right to vote as they choose. Now let's move on to the Bengals. The Chiefs are set to play the Bengals this Sunday at 3:25 p.m. Arrowhead time, with many people picking the Chiefs to win based on their strong Week 1 performance. The Bengals had a tough loss to the Patriots, one of the NFL's rebuilding teams. A key point to watch is Joe Burrow's wrist, which he had surgery on this offseason. Although Burrow said his wrist felt good after the game, he was seen squeezing his hand and checking his wrist frequently during the 4th quarter against New England. This suggests his wrist might still be causing him some discomfort. Burrow has been dealing with stiffness and swelling, and Dr. Jesse Morris believes he might face issues with it throughout his career. This is definitely something to keep an eye on for Sunday's game. Burrow had a challenging game last week, with one of his lowest pressure rates but still being sacked 3 times. His passing stats were underwhelming, averaging just 5.6 yards per attempt, which was 26th among QBs in Week 1. In contrast, Patrick Mahomes had an impressive week, finishing second among QBs with 10.4 yards per attempt and third in passing yards. Mahomes' performance was nearly double Burrow's in both yards and yards per attempt. Despite his struggles, Burrow might still take deep shots if Jamar Chase is matched up against defensive backs not named McDuffie. Chase will be a key player, especially if T. Higgins doesn't play. Higgins missed the game against the Patriots and didn't practice today. If Higgins remains out, Chase will need to step up, and the Chiefs might consider doubling him on every play. The Bengals might also look to exploit the middle of the field, as the Chiefs gave up over 100 yards to Isaiah Likely last week. However, Bengals tight ends have struggled with drops and fumbles, which could be a potential weakness for them. Here's the latest on the injury reports. Chiefs' Hollywood Brown was the only player who didn't participate today. Nick Bolton, elbow. Mike Dana, quad. Nazeeh Johnson, hamstring. And Derek Noddy, triceps, were full participants, with no major concerns. Bengals' Joe Burrow, wrist, was a full participant. T. Higgins, hamstring, did not dress for practice today, and B.J. Hill, knee, was limited. Tanner Hudson, knee, did not participate, and Chris Jenkins, thumb, was also out. Amarius Mims, pectoral, was limited, and Logan Wilson, knee, didn't participate but is expected to recover soon. Let me know your thoughts on the upcoming game and how you see it shaping up. Until next time, let's go Chiefs.